Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another game theory reaction. And this one is FNAF, How to Stop the Mimic for Good. Okay, so thinking about it, I mean, on the one hand, it could be very easy to, stop the Mimic if you were, actually prepared. I mean, if you were talking about the physical Mimic, I believe, unless the Mimic actually is possessed, which, we're not entirely sure if it is, probably not. But you'd think, a couple of explosives, a couple of well-placed hits with a sledgehammer, and then you just, and then repeat that until the Mimic is nothing but a pile of inert scrap, and then throw that into a furnace just to get rid of any last remains. Now, the Mimic program that, is Fiona and Glitchtrap and... Oh, God. FNAF has always been complicated, hasn't it? That would be a lot more difficult, given that you're not just dealing with a normal virus, you're dealing with an AI, basically. So, I mean, if you were to try to build, we have no idea how it's how it's based. Is it like one of those things where it's just on every machine it's ever infected, so you'd have to destroy like everything at once to get rid of it? Or is it like housed in like a single place that just people haven't discovered yet and you could just destroy it there? Would you have to like develop some really, really powerful antivirus software or something like that? Honestly, the options are limitless and like so small at the same time. Again, like, Secret of the Mimic, great game. I'm still not entirely certain what it means for the lore, besides, confusing a lot of people about who created who. But honestly, it's stuff like the Game Theorists and all these other channels that I specifically watch to help me, figure it out, because, again, over a decade of FNAF at this point, it's not gotten any easier in all that time. Ah, God, so yeah, I probably should get this thing started. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my film theory reaction. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because over 3/4 of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my main goal for this year is to hopefully hit 10,000 subscribers, or, as close to it as possible. But yeah, we'll throw that out of the way. Let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Sun and Moon are the key to solving the Mimic. We always knew that these strange characters were in some way connected to our latest big bad, but thanks to Secret of the Mimic, we finally know why. And it tells us everything we need to know to end it all. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's looking for lore all day and night. And I've been deep on the lore hunt, friends, thanks to the release of Secret of the Mimic. In the last episode, we focused heavily on the past and present of the Mimic, or
now
Mimics,
the future,
M1
yeah.
and M2. M2 being the physical animatronic that we fight during the game, a copy of M1's programming gone wrong, that ends up locked away underneath Murray's costume manor, and eventually the Pizzaplex all those years later. Thanks to the inclusion of the scoop and costumes from MCM, the spare parts we find lying around the facility, and, the fact he's still doing the whole attack humans thing because of what Edwin did to it.
Yeah.
Not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
M1, on the other hand, is a program that during the game is primarily appearing as Fiona, Edwin's deceased wife, trying to fix M2 in order that she can get her son, David, back. She convinces Edwin to build something called the Cradle, a large computer that mixes spawns from during Ruin. The problem is, as time's gone on, M1 gets removed from the Cradle and is used by Fazbear to create a VR game, Help Wanted, being taught
that's where,
all about
Glitchtrap comes in.
escapades and therefore beginning to mimic his actions, creating Glitchtrap. Now, M1 is confused, still trying to bring back her family, but who her family is has become a mix of her own family, like the magician and nanny bots representing her and Edwin, with the children of the Afton family that we saw in the original run of games. But what we didn't get to talk about last time was the future of the Mimic, and its connection to a character that we have been theorizing about for years, Sun and Moon.
Okay, actually, just thinking about it, I know a lot of people have pointed fun at and, kind of questioned the Mimic's eyes, where they kind of look like the heating coils on, the top of a stove. But thinking about it, I've thought about it on and off, just, at the back of my mind, and I think like, maybe the whole thing with, like, the eyes is, like, it provides, like, some sort of, like, infrared vision or something like that. So, like, you have the main cameras in the center where, you know, the dark spots are, and then the coils are there, like, projecting, basically, radar to help with, like, depth perception and, like, pathfinding or something like that. I thought I'd just say that now because I don't do FNAF reactions that much, and yeah, I wouldn't have another time to say it.
When he first showed up in Security Breach, we knew nothing about this guy or what his purpose in the whole story was. By the time Ruin came along, it felt like he had to be connected to the Mimic, with both of them sharing the same individually moving teeth, and the fact that he wears a Jester costume, which felt very connected to both the Jester costume we learned about in the books, as well as the whole Fall Fest carnival. But now we have Secret of the Mimic, and Sun and Moon are all over this thing. We've got OG versions of the characters, we've got symbolic minigames, we've even got a mysterious lullaby, all of which make one thing extremely clear. We were 100% right about Sun and Moon being connected to the Mimic. Throughout the game, we are being shown that these 2, or 3, or I suppose 4 characters are intrinsically connected in so many interesting ways, but most importantly, Sun and Moon is actually the key to not just solving the Mimic, but ending it once and for all. I hope you've knocked over all your stackable toys, friends, because it's finally time to clean up the mess that is Sun and Moon. But before we get started, quick reminder, on August 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be hosting our FNAF Secret of the Mimic live talkback, and I'm going to be joined by the wonderful John FNAF, Right Toast, ID's Fantasy, Hyperdroid, and Dorko. We're going to be talking all things Secret of the Mimic, and even taking some questions from you guys. So make sure you're subscribed and tune in to be a part of it. You won't want to miss it. Remember, that's August 16th, 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on Game Theory. But now, back to the video. The first instance we get of Sun or Moon appearing in this game is right as we enter Murray's costume manor for the first time. As we head over to the computer in the security office, we can find a few options to select. Maps, obviously a map of the facility. Logs, which is where we get to see all the juicy lore-filled chat logs that were found from the mailboxes strewn about the building. And then there's our main focus for today, Moon.exe. We've talked about Moon.exe in our previous episodes, but in case you missed those or the massive playthrough we did over on GT Live, it's basically a game within a game. We start in a bedroom, and while the goal is initially unclear, if you take a wrong turn, you face the wrath of Sleepy Moon, who tells you to go back to bed. Now, as you play the normal game, you can find collectibles inside of presents that you can then load into the system, and they will appear inside Moon.exe for you to use. Each one serves a specific purpose, either helping you to thwart Moon's attempts to stop you, or giving us information about Edwin and his family.
Honestly, okay, stopping here before they go any deeper, because I'm just thinking about it. Again, the whole thing with Sun and Moon, you know, the two sides of the same coin, you know, the robot that has a split personality. I mean, there is the whole thing with the minigame, there's Moon.exe, where, like, they draw, like, the whole Sun and Moon connections between, like, Elliot and Fiona. So I very much hope they're not going to go down the rabbit hole that somehow Sun and Moon are, like, either the souls or the personalities of, like, Edwin and Fiona put into, you know, the one animatronic with the split personality. I honestly cannot think of a way that would make any sense. So the only other thing that I can think of as a way to potentially use Sun and Moon as a way to fix or get rid of the Mimic possibly would be to somehow, like, merge the two like you do in Ruin, where you repair them and then Sun and Moon are gone and replaced with Eclipse. So whether that would mean, like, putting the M1, like, spring glitch trap program in the physical Mimic, and then, like, the two programs battling it out until they merge, or taking the program out of the physical Mimic and, like, putting it in the same place where, like, Springtrap is, so the same thing can happen again, but just purely in a digital space. I honestly have no idea where this could be going. Again, sorry, I had to say that because, like, I realized, like, I'd been very quiet in the beginning of this video, and I just, again,
In a previous episode, we've talked about the snow globe that is next to a married man and woman, where the woman looks burnt, and how it's meant to be symbolic of Edwin and Fiona Murray. But that isn't the only lore this game provides us. The initial premise of us being told to go back to bed gives you the impression that we're a child, trying to sneak out of our bedroom and go on an adventure. As we go through this adventure, we encounter a baby owl that we can save that then sticks with us throughout the journey, cooing and rubbing up against us like a pet. However, things take a weird turn when we encounter the old woman that lives in a cabin in the woods. This old woman has a head covered in spikes, kinda like you'd expect a sun to be represented. After fulfilling her tasks and fixing her 3 broken masks, she then hands you a final mask, the mask of a baby owl. At the same time, our baby owl friend seems to have gone missing, but the oven is now on, and there's a suspicious smell of chicken in the air.
Yeah, so basically, the sun is meant to like show Fiona. It's kind of hinted at Fiona may have been responsible for, David's death, because the owl was supposed to be symbolizing David, and the person you're playing as is actually the mimic, in the Moon.exe game, and the whole owl mask is allowing the mimic to take on the persona of David. It's
With our new mask equipped, this sun woman takes us to a cave that Moon is guarding, only for Moon to see the baby owl mask and to run away crying. This was the moment that things clicked for me. At first, I figured we were playing as David, with Moon being an obvious analog for his father Edwin. That's why we got explicit messages like, "Go back to bed, I'm too busy," things that Edwin would actively say to both David and his wife Fiona.
Just give me a minute. David's 2 years old. He won't remember a thing. Besides, he's got plenty more birthdays.
However, this moment where Moon, Edwin, sees us wearing a baby owl mask and then runs away crying, along with us only gaining the owl mask as the baby owl disappeared, it made me realize we weren't playing as David, but the mimic M2. M2 was designed to mimic David perfectly, like it was wearing a mask pretending to be him. And we know that that actually really upset Edwin.
Stop, not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
This game, therefore, Moon.exe, is essentially M2 learning how to be David, being taught how to behave, like being in David's bedroom and being told to go back to bed. The baby owl, therefore, the one that we get the mask from, that disappears and dies, is the actual David. And the old woman's son, the one guiding us through the game that directs us on our journey once we have the owl mask, well, the game is pretty clear about who that is. Once you execute the parachute program and head down to the R&D department, we find M1, the original mimic, now taking on the persona of Fiona, sitting there like we spoke about last time. And on the monitor surrounding her, we see the same Sun character. M1, Fiona, is Sun. And that actually explains how M2 learned to be David in the first place. When M1 and Edwin are arguing about whether to make M2, David is already gone.
It happened, and you have to deal with it. You did it before.
So how did M2 learn to copy something that wasn't around to be copied? If you saw our last episode, you'll know that M2 is actually a copy of M1's program, and M1 was around while David was alive. We even see a photo of them sitting on a hill together. So Sun, the one who is controlling and guiding this game for M2, is able to use her memory of David to help inform M2. This does bring up an interesting detail though. M1 gives M2 the owl mask, and suddenly baby owl is gone, being cooked on Sun's stove. We also know that M1 was the one that Edwin asked to go down and get David from his playground.
Fiona, go get him. I left him out at the playground.
This would seem to imply that David's death may not have been an accident after all, that M1 actually killed David in order that she could have a real family, a robot family, just like her. We spoke last time about how she's getting confused between different iterations of Fiona, one from the books and one from the games, thanks to this note we found in the basement of MCM. It's possible that she figured out she wasn't the real Fiona, and so wanted her own family.
Man, imagine that. I'm just trying to imagine the thought process there. You discover that you're not the original person, that you're like a digital duplicate of themselves. But instead of like going down some like mental rabbit hole or just like falling into despair, you think, oh, I'm a robot instead of an actual person. I still want a kid. I'll make a robot kid instead. So, still, not a very healthy way, not a very healthy thought pattern there. But certainly not the worst. Maybe? I mean, okay, maybe actually coming to the conclusion to kill your human son to make a robot duplicate of themselves is, maybe that is also very bad as well. Yeah, never mind. Forget what I said.
Rather than just an inherited one where she didn't really belong. But I'm aware this part's a little bit more speculative. It just occurred to me while I was writing this. Anyway, The point is that Moon.exe is showing us that Moon equals Edwin and Sun equals Fiona. Well, M1's version of Fiona. This finally explains why we see our modern Sun and Moon presented the way they are. By the time we get to Security Breach, Glitch Trap, or M1, has control of the Pizzaplex. She is in control of the animatronics, which is why they turn on us in the first place. But when she gets control of Sun and Moon, we see that Sun is the caretaker.
Finger pain, tell stories, drink fizzy fast until our heads explode.
They are the one who wants things to be perfect and wants to win the child's affections. They are also the one during Ruin who wants to be rebooted.
Reboot. We need to be whole.
Just like M1 Fiona wants M2 to be fixed. Moon, on the other hand,
Naughty boy, it's past your bedtime.
they want the child to just go to sleep and are far more aggressive, reflecting how M1 sees Edwin. She believes him to be aggressive both because of Moon.exe and, well,
Stop sounding like him.
Smack, yeah.
However, there is one more mention of Sun and Moon that's inside Moon.exe that I want to mention, because on the surface, it is slightly confusing. Once we get inside the cave that Moon was guarding, we encounter a broken statue. We go through the various tunnels and one by one, find pieces of the statue, putting it back together to create a Moon-like figure. Suddenly, we're told that we have been reborn.
You rebuilt yourself, but now you are split in two. Moon and Sun, destruction and life.
So, does this throw a hole in my argument here? Sun and Moon are now being used to describe M2, not Edwin and M1. And at first, that was my concern. But as I've thought about it more, I've realized it's not about the metaphor or symbolism changing, they're actually feeding into one another. The rebuilding of the statue is reminiscent of M2 rebuilding itself after Edwin destroyed it.
Speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine.
But then, why a Moon statue? Something that specifically references Edwin. Well, because it's not the same Moon. Edwin is represented by Sleepy Moon, a full Moon character, but this Moon is a crescent Moon. This is a new character, one that is similar to Sleepy Moon, even inspired by, you could say, but it's entirely its own thing. And when we're finished, we are told that it has been reborn. M2 putting itself back together wasn't just fixing itself, it was reborn. Now with a new input. Violence. Edwin's violence. Moon's violence. It was no longer just the M1 based program it was before. Edwin's actions affected M2 and caused it to be reborn as the violent animatronic we know now, like a new version of the character Moon. But it isn't just Moon. We're told that it is a combination of that destruction and the life of Sun. M1 wants to create life, making M2 their son, while Edwin
Get little baby mimic with a pacifier. That is such a stupid visual. I just love it.
to destroy M2. These two things have combined together to make the mess that is M2. And those pieces are now at war with each other. Again, just like Sun and Moon are in Security Breach. Duality in this franchise is something that I've wanted to write a theory about for a long time. It felt like there's been so much of it in the series. From the two-toned logo on the Ruin website, to two-colored eyes of the Tiger plushie, Sun and Moon, to even as far back as William versus Henry. It's always been about these two opposing sides being mixed together into one thing, something that usually ends in a mess or tragedy. At the time, I just didn't really know where it was going in order to write the theory on it, but now I understand. This is what it was trying to tell us. Visual clues to tell us the story of Edwin and M1 Fiona without actually spelling it out. It's also why Sun and Moon's moving teeth are the same as the mimics. They may not literally be the same. Sun and Moon may not actually be a mimic, but it's visual storytelling, giving us a physical clue to their connection. We were just missing the key detail of Edwin and M1 even existing in this continuity to be able to tie it all together. Although I'm sure the lore reason for the teeth thing is once again just the mimic rebuilding itself with spare parts. We'll see. But
Probably,
Sun
yeah,
and Moon
that would
isn't
make the
done
most
teaching
sense.
us about the mimic just yet, because in Ruin, we get to see that these opposing sides can turn from a mess into something new. We see Sun struggling to keep control while Moon is acting dangerous, again, like we've been seeing with M2, the original program unable to keep control, with the violence taking over and attacking people. But
And again, it's the whole thing, you reboot it, and then it causes, like, again, the new character, quote-unquote new character of Eclipse, and it's new, sane, I mean, sane as these animatronics can be, but again, so what's that got to do? Like, does that mean, so, would that mean we'd have to try to reboot the Mimic? Because again, we have the two Mimics programs going on, so would that mean you'd have to try to, like, merge the two of them, like I suggested before, or are you just focusing on the physical Mimic to do first, and then you go after the Glitch Trap later? Again, so many questions here.
after Cassie is able to plug in the data diver, Fazwrench, they reboot and Eclipse is born. They are calm, fun, friendly, protective, exactly as they were supposed to be. We fixed them. But did you notice the key detail? Eclipse isn't Sun now fully in control, nor is Moon completely gone. It's both halves mixed
merging,
together in order to create something new. Sure, Sun was trying to help us and was the good side of both of them, but we're being shown that you actually need both sides in perfect balance in order to make things work. And this idea is reflected in Secret of the Mimic 2. When down in the basement, we encounter Sleepy Moon in the flesh, or cloth, or whatever it is.
Whatever, yeah.
Of. And
in fact, there's the whole thing where there are some people theorizing that this isn't even the Mimic. This is just like a rogue employee that got trapped in the basement and was driven insane by the solitude.
one of the telltale signs he's close by is you can hear him singing.
Oh, he's near. He's near. He's near.
It can be hard to make out the exact lyrics he's singing while you're trying desperately not to lose all your progress, but the melody should definitely ring a bell.
It's literally a
actually
lullaby.
the most popular lullaby of all time, simply called Wagenlei, or lullaby in English. You may have also heard it known as Brahms' lullaby, named after its composer, Johannes Brahms. And it goes a little something like this. Lullaby and good night, with roses bed eyes, with lilies o'erspread, his baby's wee bed. Lay thee down now and rest, may thy slumber be blessed. Lay thee down now and rest, may thy slumber be blessed. Thank you, thank you. Now, you could say that the use of this song was just they needed a lullaby from Sleepy Moon to sing, so they picked the most obvious one. But where has that ever been the game theory way? You see, this
No, it's
song
never that
wasn't
simple,
written
is it?
to be sung on its own. It was designed as a mother and father duet. While the mother would sing the lullaby, alongside it, the father would sing an old German folk song called Sis Andischt, which is a song that the original mother actually used to sing to Brahms when they were together. This would then work as a counter melody underneath the primary melody of the lullaby. Counter melodies are super interesting because rather than a harmony which works in lockstep with the melody, the counter melody is literally a second different melody that plays at the same time.
Okay, honestly, I had never heard of that before. That's interesting. I mean, again, this is why I watch videos like this. I love learning little facts and tidbits like that. But if that's the case, then if the moon is singing, you know, the lullaby, who's singing the other part?
If you try this with just any two songs, you're going to have a lot of clashes and mess, and it's just not going to work. But when done right, these two parts that don't feel like they should go together suddenly begin to almost dance. They bounce off one another, creating something totally new. It's not working together in harmony, but they do work together, despite appearing diametrically opposed. But right now, with Mimic as is, it clearly is a mess. These two forces are working against each other, not as a counter melody, but as clashing melodies. So if Eclipse and the lullaby are showing us we need to bring these pieces into alignment, how do we do that? Well, I think the answer lies in the secret ending of Secret of the Mimic. In order to get M2 to calm down enough that we can insert new programming into it, we have to play a bedtime story for it. The bedtime story itself changes each time, but what doesn't change is the people telling the story. The pre-recorded tapes that we find throughout the Murray household to get here include Edwin's voice and Fiona's voice, both of them working together to tell a story, telling M2 that violence doesn't solve anything in order to bring balance to M2. The lullaby also hints at this because it actually has one more name that I neglected to mention. It's sometimes known as the Cradle Song or Cradle Lullaby, just like Cradle.exe, which we spoke about last time, is Mexes, a program designed to soothe M2, keep it under control, but required M1 and Edwin to work together to implement. M1 wants to restore M2. Edwin wants to destroy all versions of the Mimic. These two things shouldn't work together. They feel like conflicting views. But when these characters come into alignment with one another, the song begins to form. M1 cannot restore M2 on her own. Sure, she may have the glitched code, but Edwin's voice was crucial for the plan working. We need to bring M1 and Edwin back together in order to truly stop whatever M2 has become.
Which, yeah, that's going to be a little hard given that, Edwin, by the time of Ruin, has been dead for probably close on, 40 years. So, unless you can find, that lullaby that, worked in the secret ending, how are you going to do that?
And to put both M1 and M2 to rest, finally. But you may have noticed a problem with that solution. As far as we can tell, Edwin is dead.
Due to a minor detonation, there is damage to my office interior, as well as a small fire.
No! M2! Respond, please! I can't move. I can't feel my legs.
M2 blew up part of the house and refused to help Edwin while it burnt and collapsed around him. But remember what franchise we're talking about here, friends.
Yeah.
Just because someone is dead doesn't mean they're truly gone. In fact, Moon basically tells us as such with the lullabies he's singing. Oh yeah, this thing still has a lot to give in terms of lore significance.
How, though? I mean, because, Edwin didn't die in the animatronic, so it's not like he could be possessing the Mimic or, have the possibility of possessing the Mimic. He most likely died under a pile of rubble, which, if he still existed as a ghost, how are you supposed to, communicate with the ghost? Unless, oh god, wait a second. I remember, I remember people theorizing that, Glamrock Freddy was, actually being possessed by, Michael and stuff like that. God, are they going to say that Glamrock Freddy was actually being possessed by, Edwin or something like that? Granted, that'd be a stretch even for them. Okay, let's see, where are you going with this?
And it's to do with the more meta side of it, why it was written and who it was written for. Brahms wrote this lullaby for his close friend Bertha Faber. Brahms and Faber used to date many years before, which is when she used to sing Sis Arndish to him, a song about a shepherd and his lover. When they reconnected years later, she was married to someone else, had a child with another on the way. Brahms wrote this lullaby for the birth of that second child, but it wasn't a completely selfless, sweet act. He wrote it so that when she and her husband sang it together to their baby, he would also be there. It was a way of making sure he was connected to her always, even when he wasn't physically around.
When you say it out loud like that is actually extremely creepy.
If Moon is supposed to represent Edwin, and he's the one singing this song, it makes me think that we're being told that while he may be physically gone, he's not completely gone. He's just somewhere hidden, somewhere we wouldn't expect. And that somewhere, I believe, is Princess Quest. Because I think that Edwin is the king, otherwise known as Old Man Consequences.
Okay. Honestly, didn't see that coming. Wow. So that, I mean, I guess if that were true, that would answer a lot of things. Like Old Man Consequences seemingly, a gator. Edwin created, the very first versions of Monty. And that would give an answer just as what Old Man Consequences is. Because, that's always been sort of a little question there, because he just sort of was there. And, Old Man Consequences, Edwin kind of, like, learning from the consequences of his actions. That, everything kind of... Yeah... God, okay, yeah, I mean, I could see that. That could work. My only question is how? Because, again, everything, like, again, we first saw Old Man Consequences in FNAF world. How did Edwin's soul get into, like, the FNAF world, if he didn't die in, like, an animatronic? He was killed by an animatronic, but not in one. At least, we don't think so.
Okay, before you start writing in the comments about how I followed in Matt's footsteps and I've lost my mind to this franchise, hear me out. I'm not the only person to have had this idea. This idea was actually brought up during our recent live theory crafting session by fellow FNAF theorist Gibby's Horror Homestead.
Oh, I see that, Gibby Horror's Homestead. Edwin as Old Man Consequences. Hello, Gibby. Great for you to join us. This thought actually occurred to me today.
And not only had the thought occurred to me earlier that day, since then, I've not been able to get it out of my head. It just makes so much sense to me. I mean, Edwin is the ultimate man of consequence. His creation of crazy gadgets landed him in bed with Fazbear, who then took everything from him. His rushed inventions meant things could go wrong easily, so Fiona went to Fall Fest to make sure that didn't happen, and she died. He didn't pay enough attention to his son, and so David ended up dead. He created an incredibly powerful AI and then beat it up, and so in return, it killed him. Everything Edwin did came back to bite him on the butt. Consequence, thy name is Edwin.
Okay, actually, thinking about it, that also just made me think of something. So, if, we're saying Edwin is Old Man Consequences here, that opens up the possibility that literally every non-player NPC in FNAF world is potentially somebody. And it's not just, some spirit in this, happy-go-lucky, animatronic funland. So my question is, like, who would Endo be? Who would Lolbit be? I mean, I remember, oh god, I hope I can find it so I can edit it in, but I remember somebody, like, making, like, a joke comic where the Lolbit of FNAF world, like, went into the flip side and gained the ability to, like, go into different, like, dimensions, and that's why you see Lolbit in, like, FNAF sister location during, like, the custom night, or, and stuff like that in other places. Oh, god, but just the idea of that, where, like, somebody, just as, like, an extension of that, where you have somebody, they go, like, they die, they become, Lolbit in, FNAF world, then they find a way to temporarily come back to the old world as, like, it's like an image on a screen or something like that. Like, man, that'd be weird. Ooh.
Plus, in the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, The Storyteller, Edwin does come back 40 years later and tries to stop the Mimic. And Old Man Consequences in Security Breach is all about equipping the princess to defeat the Glitch Trap virus, aka the M1 program that's been corrupted by Afton's influence and is now running the Pizzaplex. We also know that Game Edwin wants to stop the Mimic. Both Mimics.
Yeah.
I let a machine raise my kid. You're not real. What was I thinking?
He realized what he'd created and that it couldn't replace the real thing, which is why he didn't want to fix M2. Instead, just going along with the plan to create mexes to pacify it. Now, I'm not saying that Edwin is possessing Princess Quest or anything like that. Modern FNAF requires modern solutions, and so I believe it's more likely that, like M1 isn't really Fiona, but the M1 program mimicking Fiona, that this is another program designed to imitate Edwin, like a digital signature of sorts. In the real world, programmers will sometimes physically put part of themselves into their code. They will leave a line of code or even just a few letters or symbols so that when someone else takes a look, they will know whose code it is. We actually see Gregory do this in GGY. When the animatronics begin behaving strangely, the characters take a look at the code and find the letters GGY all over the place. It's not really doing anything, it's just a digital signature to let you know that this was Gregory's doing. At this point, M1 has been integrated into basically every part of Fazbear Entertainment's technology. M1 is running the show, corrupting everything, but M1 was Edwin's code. He created it, and so I'm suggesting that deep in that programming lies a little piece of himself, almost like a failsafe that's there trying to fight back. Old Man Consequences. In FNAF World, he was buried deep in that code, but as time's gone on, he's slowly come more and more to the surface, able to help more and more. He helped Vanny fight back against the glitch trap virus. We even saw Moon, the character we've talked about representing Edwin, giving over glitch trap to Vanny so that she could crush it and be free of its influence at the end of Princess Quest 4. And
Okay, yeah, I didn't even think about that, the weird ending of Hope Wanted 2. Right. Okay.
I think in whatever sequel Steelwell has planned, we're going to have to help Old Man Consequences one last time to free M1 of Glitch Trap's influence and bring Edwin and M1 together to stop M2. They may be doing it for different reasons. Edwin may still want to destroy it. M1 may still want to fix it. But if we can get them to put aside their differences, those counter melodies are going to start to work together to create a complete piece that will end the internal battle of the Mimic once and for all. Although the Mimic in Ruin does seem to have a convenient hole where we had to insert the data diver during the secret ending, so we might have to figure out a different way to get these two fighting programs into it in the first place. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. Well,
You know, that's one of those things, like, I still love FNAF. Like, I love all the theories, and whenever a new game comes out, I love just seeing what can happen in this franchise. Like, it is just, I mean, I've stuck with it this long. I'm going to keep sticking with it. But at the same time, I really do miss, you know, the whole, you know, spiritual or haunted aspect of it. Because, like, again, you know, it has always been somewhat sci-fi, you know, the concept of, you know, a soul being trapped in a machine and stuff like that. But we've lost the soul part, and now we're just going on to pure AI. I mean, I remember, you know, when they were still doing theories just about, you know, a security breach in Ruin and stuff like that before Secret of the Mimic came out. I remember really kind of, like, thinking on the idea of where you have the AI, like these advanced AI animatronics having to deal with actually being possessed and maybe, like, the two minds merging or something like that. And, like, you know, I thought about it, and my whole, like, headcanon of, like, oh, what if you did, like, another security breach game set in the Pizzaplex, but it was, like, security breach salvage, where you're going in as, like, a Faz tech going to salvage, you know, stuff from the Pizzaplex before it's demolished to be rebuilt after, you know, something like that. Maybe after they finally decided to fix the sinkhole under, you know, Roxy Raceway, but they need to tear down the entire thing first. Like, I had, like, it's one of those things where I've had, like, an entire, like, story or plot in my head kind of worked out, but the ending never really came to me, and just the idea of, like, you have that tech where something happens and they end up being killed, and, you know, Fazbear being Fazbear, they just write it off, but as the game comes to a close, you see, like, the eyes of one of the endos, you know, one of the endos that kind of, like, does the, you know, weeping angel, you know, freeze when you look at it. Like, it lights up and begins moving on its own as it's now being possessed by, like, the soul of the technician. Just so we could get some of that old school FNAF flavor back in the franchise again. Like, oh, God, you know, that would be cool. But, I mean, again, no idea where, you know, the franchise is going. But again, the idea that, you know, we're gonna have to... Again, the idea that Edwin is somehow Old Man Consequences. I mean, thinking about it, you know, the whole thing of, you know, leaving a piece of yourself in the code. I mean, you know what that makes me think of? Like, anybody watching this, have you ever seen 9? You know, that movie, that CG movie that came out years ago about the little, like, sack puppets in, like, in the post-apocalypse. And, you know, spoilers for a how many years old movie now. But it turns out that each of the 9 puppets actually was brought to life by the scientists who create them by giving them a piece of his soul. And, like, with all of the weirdness that happens in this franchise, can you imagine if, you know, Old Man Consequences wasn't like, as they said, like the complete, like it wasn't just, you know, the soul of Edwin, you know, in, you know, the machine or something like that. But like Edwin was so emotional and like so, you know, angry just from the emotion, you know, because again, emotion is also a very powerful thing in this franchise, that he literally left a piece of himself in the code, either like, like obviously unintentionally, but that little piece is what survived to then become Old Man Consequences later on. Like, man, that would definitely be a story. Wow. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.